someone who did not, as a conservative Republican, support Donald Trump during the campaign. Bill, thank you very much. Your take on Steve Bannon?
I wouldn't have recommended him for a senior position in the White House, but Donald Trump's entitled to have the aides he wants in the White House, and we'll see what Mr. Bannon does and how much Donald Trump listens to him. And I suppose one has to give people a fresh start. Maybe I don't know.
Now, it did get personal. Breitbart, under Steve Bannon's leadership, called you a renegade Jew.
Yeah, I don't think that means, but I'm not sure. And he was only the editor of the website. It was the writer who was proud of that, using that apparently. I suppose I didn't realize that the fate of the state of Israel depended on the election of Donald J. Trump, and not realizing that made me, even though I'm rather pro-Israel, a renegade Jew. Look, I don't like Bannon. I don't know him at all, really, but I don't like what he's done. I think some of the policies he's advocated would be bad for the country. That's one reason I wasn't for Donald Trump. But Trump won, and I didn't. And it's a mixed bag. Reince Priebus, I have a high regard for. He'll be chief of staff. The names I have heard, I was just talking about the transition more broadly, Andrea, and Washington's great, right? Everyone, Trump can't win. Oh my God, Trump won. There's 48 hours of chickens running around with their heads cut off. And then immediately, as a party Friday night of a lot of people, most of them weren't for Trump. Hey, who's getting what job? What do you think? Maybe it could be better than we think. Maybe defense will be good if states, So, of course, everyone's into this. And I would say, and I spoke to the Republican governors yesterday morning, talked to a lot of them privately, I would say it's a mess. Every transition is a mess. This transition is messy in a particularly Trumpian way, but the proof will be in the eating of the pudding in this case. I mean, who cares how messy the transition is if you end up with a good Secretary of State, a good Secretary of Defense, a good Attorney General. My general headline take on it is the White House under Donald Trump will be very personal and kind of messy in the sense that Trump will run it in a hands-on way, and it's going to be very indistinct who reports to whom and lines of authority, and there'll be a lot of jostling and probably some knife stabbing and stuff. But you've covered these agencies, Andrea. State, Defense, Justice, Treasury, they really matter. And if you end up with decent appointments there and people who can then make appointments under them who are good, you could end up with a pretty competent administration with a pretty sort of slightly bizarre White House.
And let's talk about state, defense, justice. What about Rudy Giuliani as Secretary of State?
I think he'll get the job. He's done things in the private sector that he'll have to say, okay, that was then, and I'm not, continuing my contracts with various governments, but I don't think that disqualifies. I thought he was a little over the top as a surrogate for Donald Trump, but I suppose that was in the heat of the campaign, and Rudy Giuliani was a heck of a good mayor of New York. I discussed foreign policy with him over the years, and I've actually found him kind of congenial. I don't want to ruin his chances here, but I found him myself agreeing with him most of the time on foreign policy, and he's a serious guy. I'm not sure he'd be my first choice, but I don't think the country's going to, I think it's a reasonable selection.
Do you think that there's a problem, a confirmation problem, in that he would have to recuse himself from countries and leaders with whom he's had contracts?
I think he would sell his part of the firm or step away from the firm, I should think, and that's traditionally been done. And, people have had business relationships. They need to end them so we don't have a kind of Clinton Foundation situation. I assume Giuliani would do that.
And finally, Mike Flynn as National Security Advisor.
He was respected by many people, and when he was head of the Defense Intelligence Agency and government, he's been pretty extreme since then, and has done some things that have said things that are pro-Putin that I don't like. I think he will be National Security Advisor, first of all. He will be dealing with Donald Trump. He'll be powerful. A lot for me depends on who the Secretary of State is, who the Secretary of Defense is, who the head of CIA is. Those people, if they run those agencies well, you could have it's a foreign policy I'm not going to agree with in every respect. It's going to be a bit of a mess, I suspect, a lot of pulling and hauling, but it make a huge difference who has those heavyweight positions, really.
Senator Mark Warner.